Do you want them to start?
Good evening to one and all present over here. I, Ashitwa Agrawal, on behalf of NSS Unit of HR College of Commerce and Economics, would like to extend a warm welcome to our principal in charge, Dr. Pooja Ramchandani ma'am, our guest speaker for the day, Mrs. Sheetal Dhillon, respected teachers, and my fellow friends. I warmly welcome all of you to this webinar. Today, we have gathered here to listen from our guest speaker, Mrs. Sheetal Dhillon, on one of the most important topics, dyslexia. Mrs. Sheetal Dhillon is a clinical psychologist, physiotherapist, and special educator. She is the member of Rehabilitation Council of India and member of Indian Association of Child Adolescent Mental Health. She has co-authored a chapter on specific learning disability over a decade in the book named Miss How and Me with Dr. Henal Shah, who is currently the HOD of Psychiatry Department, BYL NAS Children's Hospital. She has also worked at Sir JJ Group of Hospitals and Child Guidance Clinic under the guidance of Dr. Beena Sawant, conducting psychological evaluations, diagnosis, play therapy, parental guidance, and counseling. Talking about her experiences, since May 2007, she has been working at BYL NAS Children at Hospital Secretary Department, Learning Disability Center, where she is conducting psychoeducational evaluation, training, diagnosis, parental guidance, and counseling till date. Since 2009, she has been attached with Dhanvantri Special School in the Child Welfare Trust, Bhuj, being the member of advisory panel and conducting IQ evaluations, teacher training, parental guidance, and counseling as a part of medical camps conducted till date. We are honored to have you on board, ma'am. Now, I would like to formally invite our guest speaker for the day, Mrs. Sheetal Dhillon, ma'am, to take this session forward. The stage is all yours, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. They can. I just have to change. Yeah. Just click on this.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Audible.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Let me start with the presentation. I'm going to be talking about specific learning disability, which is basically known as SLD, but in a layman's term, or the terminology that generally people use, is dyslexia. That's what people know. So when you're talking with people, or you're talking with friends, you're talking with family, you all generally use the word dyslexia, which is a very loosely used term. So I'm taking the opportunity to recorrect a few facts out here. So children who are having issues with learning in the areas of reading, writing, and math basically suffer from having SLD. That's specific learning disability, because the areas of learning are affected. So when I say dyslexia, it's just a part of the whole umbrella or the terminology. So that's the reason I specifically use the word specific learning disability as a part of my presentation. When kids are referred to our center, first of all, you need a school letter. So we generally assess children with a school letter. We need a school letter, as in, so the school knows what issues the child has been facing, and the counselor or the teacher, are the ones who observe what issues the child has been having during, say, the reading area or the writing area, or when they are doing math. So we need a school letter, which is a must. For every kid, we generally do an assessment for auditory and visual, because we need to know whether, whether the child has any hearing impairment, or does he have any visual impairment. Because kids having hearing impairment, visual impairment, we need to be very clear when we are diagnosing them, whether it is issues because of the organic problems, or is it because of the perceptual issues. When you're talking about visual perception, auditory perception, so that's different from actually having a problem related to the organ of the body. After that, we generally have a interview with the parents, where we take a proper detailed case history regarding how the child is being through years of his evaluation, and in school, and his schooling years, his formal years of schooling, during his primary years. Most of the times kids come to us when they are in the secondary. So we need a little bit of history out there from the parents. We also interview the child separately to get a little idea about how the child has been coping up in school, or is coping up with his studies, what challenges he faces as a student. Post that we generally have education. We generally have an IQ evaluation to be done. And in that, it's basically, you're asking the child a few questions, or you are giving them some puzzles to do. You're giving them some kind of objects or block designs. So it's basically more like a playway method when you're assessing the kid. So that's a psychometric evaluation that we generally do. That's an IQ evaluation. Sometimes some kids come to us with issues such as anxiety or feeling low, having issues, could be having some kind of emotional issues, dealing with their own self-confidence, dealing with issues at the home front. So there are times when we require to do some kind of a projective assessment. So there are certain projective tests that are administered to the child. After that, we generally go ahead with the psychoeducational evaluation. And that's a test where we require the child to assess them in the areas of reading, writing, and math, a little more into details or looking into the prerequisites of learning, especially for children. And after that, we have a pediatric evaluation. So in the pediatric evaluation, we are generally looking at issues where children would have comorbidities such as epilepsy or any other medical condition, or thyroid, or say diabetes. So how these other comorbidities are also affecting the child's overall growth and intellectual ability. So this is the whole circle that we complete before we give a diagnosis to a child. So surely it is a very tedious task on our hand, and that's the reason we have long waiting periods. So generally the evaluation takes around 3 to 4 months, because every kid has to be assessed through the whole circle. Okay, now let's come to intelligence. Very important when you're talking about intelligence. What exactly is intelligence? We all talk about intelligence. There are times when we talk with each other, oh, you're a high IQ, or oh, you're low IQ, or you don't understand things, right? So when we say intelligence, it's this is a definition given by Wechsler. So it's an aggregate or a global capacity of an individual to act purposefully, think rationally, and deal effectively with the environment. That's all intelligence is. So when you're talking about capacity, as in, how well the child is being able to do certain things in the situation, like in a given situation, how does he act? How does he think? Is he taking a rational step, or is it irrational? Whether he's understanding what the consequences are, and whether he's dealing with the environment in a very effective manner. So all these things put together is your intelligence. Okay, we'll talk about IQ classifications. Can anyone tell me what's a normal IQ? Any guesses? Anyone there who can tell you what's a normal IQ? They're not writing this. I can't hear them. No, I can't hear them.
Is it 100?
Okay, 100. Okay. Any other guesses?
140.
Anji?
140.
140. Okay. I'm talking about a normal IQ, darling. Okay. So when I'm saying normal IQ, so the normal IQ is generally between your 100 and it's 90 to 109. So that's the average intelligence. Okay. With every 10 points higher, the category would change. So the next category would be between 110 to 119, which is above average or a bright normal category. Next is 120 to 129, which is a superior intellectual category. Then you have the next category, which comes in with the 130 to 139. It's very superior intelligence. And your 140 is a genius category. So it's not an average category. So any person across the globe, if you're doing an IQ evaluation, the scores, be it a boy, be it a girl, an older person, or an adult, any IQ evaluation done across the globe, if the scores fall between 90 to 109, then it's an average category. Okay. What are the IQ tests that we administer? So there are a lot of IQ tests available in the market, but these are a few ones which we generally administer. So for kids between 5 to 15 years, we generally administer the WISC-3 and or the WISC-4. The WISC-4 is the it's a new addition to our psychometric evaluation. For kids who are 16 years and above, we generally administer the WAIS-3 or the WAIS-4. And there's something also called as the Woodcock-Johnson test of cognitive abilities, which again looks into the area of intelligence. So these are a few tests which are there. There are many more available in the field, but these are the main ones which we use for our diagnosis. So when you're talking about the WISC-4 or the WAIS-4, these are the certain, so what are the areas we're looking at when you're doing an IQ evaluation? So you have something called the VCI, which is the verbal comprehension index. You have the PRI, which is the performance, perceptual reasoning index. You have the VMI, which is the working memory index. You have PSI, which is the processing speed index. You have an FSQ or the full scale IQ, and then you have a GI. So when I'm saying VCI, what I'm talking about is children, how well they are well versed when they are, when they're able to talk, when they are giving, are able answering to me, what kind of vocabulary are they using, what kind of information do they have, how good are they with their knowledge of words. So that's looking into verbal comprehension. You look into the perceptual reasoning, you give them certain blocks, you give them certain reasoning questions, certain puzzles. So looking at the perceptual area. So that's the reason I said very important. You need to check for their vision, and if they have specs, then they're supposed to wear specs during the evaluation. So you're taking care of any visual issues. You have working memory, which looks into the attention. How good are they when they're paying attention, like the short-term memory or short span. And you have something called processing speed, which you're looking at how quickly does the child or the individual, answer your question when being asked. Then have something called the full scale IQ, which takes into consideration all the 4 areas, and it gives you a score there. And you have something called the GI, because there are times when every child is different. So you get a different profile. You might not be getting scores which are, consistent across the 4 domains. So the only 2 domains that you can look into is your VCI and the PRI. So that constitutes of the GI. So there are certain scores that you will be seeing on your report. And every score, how you can interpret is, how I have told you, the earlier scores I've told you, you can interpret it in the main manner, whether it's average or it's below average or, things like that. Okay. These are for a few educational evaluations. So when I spoke about psychometric evaluations, I've already spoken about the IQ. These are educational tests or basically achievement tests. Okay. So you got again the Woodcock-Johnson, which is, so the age range is quite good. It's from 2 years to 90 years. So I can assess a child who's 2 years old also, just with sounds and things like that. So I get kids who are as early as 5-year-olds just to, to find out whether they're at risk for a learning issue. So you've got the Woodcock-Johnson, you've got A, B, and C forms. You have something called as the CBT, which is called a curriculum-based test. It's basically developed on the Indian population. Then you have something called the Grade Achievement Test, that's called a GLAD. You have an enhanced battery. We've got a new enhanced battery in the process. This is the older version that we have. You have the Wide Range Achievement Test, which is the 4th. So we've got the 4th version of it. There's a 5th version out also. And there are many more. So in the market, there are many more tests which are there. It all depends on the clinician or the teacher, which test you want to use and what kind of analysis you're making out of the whole evaluation. So whenever you're giving a diagnosis to a child, you always have to keep in mind the IQ, the different tests that I've spoken about, and the educational test. And both of them together gives you a proper comprehensive diagnosis about the child. Let's understand what SLD is, okay? So when I'm talking about SLD or special learning disability, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder produced by the interaction of the heritable and the environmental factors. How basically, how these two factors are so much involved when it comes to a child in the learning process. Secondly, it is also characterized by the persistent difficulty learning academic skills. So I'm saying reading, writing, math. Okay, these are academic skills you need to learn. So, so reading, writing, written expression as early as in your earlier childhood. And that is inconsistent with the IQ. Because when I get kids or when kids come for evaluation, they are absolutely normal. Like clinically, you feel they are normal, but yet they are having issues in reading, writing, maths. So yeah, it's so the academic skills are not in consistent with the IQ. So the IQs could be higher. I could have a child who's say 130 or 140, but yet struggling with reading, writing, math as an issue. So that's the reason it's not persistent with the academic skills. What are the other issues that children face, having SLE? So what are the social difficulties that a child with SLE would be facing? First of all, reading facial expressions. So they're not very good at understanding body language of the other person, Probably interpreting subtle messages such as sarcasm, okay? Confusion in spatial orientation. You can have difficulty in understanding commands or following multiple commands, disorientation when it comes to time, date, money, communication gaps. So there are times when they're not able to fill up gaps, they might give you information which is half, and probably that's the reason there are times when they don't get along with their own friends or their own social circles, because they can't be consistent in what they are saying or they're talking. Study skills. When it comes to study skills, what are the issues they face? So poor organization, they're not very good at organizing their study material. Time management, always they need extra time. They always shortage of time for them. So the time management skills are another problem for them. Difficulty in following instructions, especially multiple instructions. Sometimes, coping and completing notes from the board or from your friends, they take time in doing certain things. Delay in assignments and submission. So they basically need time as a factor. What are the other issues that they face is, oral language difficulties. So memorizing basic factual knowledge. So basic facts or general information, they have a problem in remembering factual knowledge. Difficulty expressing their ideas orally, which the students seem to. So he might be understanding the concept, but he's not able to, he's not able to express himself orally. Problems describing events or incidents that have happened in their life, and that also too in a sequence, very limited vocabulary when it comes to expressing themselves, and a lot of concrete ideation. So the ideas which they would share or they would write down would be quite concrete. Can someone, can someone explain me this picture that you all can see? What can you understand from this picture?
That the student has not cleared his exam. He failed in that exam.
Yes, absolutely. And what does the other picture talk about?
He either has come first. Yeah, he won the race. He's come first.
Absolutely. So you can see what I'm trying to talk about here is when I'm saying IQ or when I'm saying the intelligence part, so they are very good when it comes to other things other than academics. So the first picture which I spoke about towards your right hand side, is basically failure in academic areas. We are consistent of reading, writing, math. But when I'm talking about other things, for example, sports, arts, drawing, drama, athletics, fine motor skills, they are very good at that. I have got a lot of children who achieved a lot of things in life because IQ wise they're good. So potentially they are very good. Potentially no issues out there. But when it comes to academics, so academics is the only area which is affected, not the overall area. So they're as normal as any other kid, and they can achieve things in life. Why not? So there's always a discrepancy between their potential, what they can do, and actually how much they're able to do. So the achievement talks about your reading, writing, math. We're looking at the scores, you're looking at scores, how they're scoring, what marks have they got. But overall, when you're talking about potential, how good they are in understanding, doing things. So IQ-wise, they are quite good. They're smart enough. That's another reason why people cannot make out whether a child has LD. So when you have a friend or you have anyone who says, okay, I've got a learning problem, 2 minutes you try to stare at the person and say, you don't look different. You look absolutely normal. Where is the disability? So when you talk about SLD, it's a hidden disability or a neurological disability. It's not shown. It's not like a physical disability which appears, where the child would have some kind of a physical handicap. So that's the reason there are times when people think that, okay, he's just making up. He doesn't have any kind of a disability. So this is one area which I think I would want to speak about. Let's understand what are the three areas SLD disorder, which is called the dyslexia. You have the written disorder, which is called the dysgraphia, and you have the mathematical disorder, which is called the dyscalculia. And to read it out to me or write for me. So yes, they do. There are times when they take longer than other kids to complete assignments, to do things. So
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
okay. Just one second, just 2 minutes.
You have to switch the internet. It's better now. Check now.
Yeah, just check now.
Yeah, all
Yes,
right.
ma'am, it's much better. Yes,
Better, yeah. Fine. So we're talking about SLD in the three areas, that's reading, writing, math. So reading is dyslexia, writing is dysgraphia, and maths is dyscalculia. Okay. Just have a look at this screen of mine right now. I would want people to give me little inputs after looking at this.
It is the difference which one person thinks and says.
Okay. What else?
Not being able to express what she wants.
Okay, that's another one. Anything else? So we can see there's a certain word she's hearing, and there's another word which she's saying. So when she's hearing specific, but she's saying pacific, so very, very similar sounding words for them. So even if you see the words in the above picture, the word written itself is being spelled differently within all those 5 people out there. So someone's spelling it like a WROBS, someone is saying WRBS, okay? So when I'm saying dyslexia, I'm talking about how that's the reason, this is one of the reasons why we need the auditory, we generally need the audiogram to understand whether there's any hearing impairment, with the child, whether child is having any issues with the hearing. And sometimes because of that, they are not being able to hear or not being able to understand the instructions. So that's one of very important, that's why we rule out the hearing and the vision in the first session itself, Okay. So these are certain reading errors that you can see, look out here. So, like the animal would be read as aminal, dad becomes bad, numerous becomes numus. So these are certain reading errors that a child would make, So very slow reading. They read quite slowly. They lack fluency. They're not able to read very fluently. They're not very fluent readers. Pronouncing a word many different ways within the same passage. So within the same passage, they keep on, reading a word, but in a different manner. They can substitute one word for another. There are problems in learning the names of certain letters. When I get kids as young as in the 3rd standard or the 4th standard, not understanding what sound with which letter. A lot of addition and transposition of letters you could see in their reading. Difficulty retaining letter sounds. So when I'm doing sound recognition with them, they cannot retain which letter makes what sound. So they need a lot of repetition to learn certain sounds, because sounds, if they don't know the sounds, it's going to affect their reading. It's also going to affect their spellings. It will further affect their writing areas also. Many times reversals of letters is also seen, So your God becomes the dog, the word dog becomes God. So things like that. The next area I'm going to talk about is dyscalculia. It's basically a mathematical disability in which a person has a difficult time solving arithmetical problems and grasping math concepts. When it comes to day-to-day life, when you're talking about money, when you're talking about money transactions, you're talking about time schedules, you're talking about, time management, you're talking about structuring their week for work. So these are certain areas which they find quite difficult if a child is having issues with math or the dyscalculia. So generally using very immature strategies. So basically counting on fingers, drawing circles, drawing lines, difficulty remembering tables. Yeah, this is one area I think most of the children struggle with, remembering tables, understanding arithmetical computation. So when I think computation means, like signs, understanding signs. So when you have a plus sign, which is straight, the moment you just turn it, you just twist a little bit, it will become a multiplication sign. There are times when a child who's in the 3rd or 4th standard, struggles with plus and a multiplication sign. There are times when children don't understand the sign, minus sign or the equal to sign. So at times when I show them the equal to sign and I tell them, okay, can you tell me what sign is this? So it's minus, and they would minus the number twice because there are 2 minus signs. Okay, so confusion in money transaction in day-to-day life. Then you have slow in comprehending mathematical concepts. They take time to understand concepts. Struggle with the language of math. When you're talking about sum, altogether, total, they all mean plus, but you're not able to understand that, So I'll give you a little example out here. So I'm going to give you a question. I want you all to listen carefully and give me the answer and give me the reason behind the answer. So the question is, JS car holds 15 liters of gas, Anna's holds 10, and Ellen's holds 20. How many more liters does Jay's car hold than Anna's car? I'll repeat it. Jay's car holds 15 liters of gas, Anna's holds 10, Ellen's holds 20. How many more liters does Jay's car hold than Anna's car? What would be the answer here?
Ma'am, 5.
Yeah.
5.
Yes.
5.
Yeah. What computation have you done?
5.
No, what did you do?
Subtracted 15 from
Fraction.
15 minus 10.
We subtracted 10 Annas from Jai.
Yeah. Now, when a child with LD would read this sum, the moment I'm saying how many more means plus. So the child would add up the answer, add up the numbers and tell me, okay, it's 25. Got it? So rather than understand, that's what I'm saying, they understand the language of math. So at times they would at least recognize the signs. But when it comes to language of math, the moment I'm twisting or turning the language, they find it difficult to comprehend. So word problems is the major issues that children face when they're doing, when they're doing their math in school. That the reason that's the main area of considering for dyscalculia. So reading is fine, but they're not able to understand the language. There are times when my kids will be struggling with basic computation. For example, when I'm doing a division sum or I'm doing a multiplication sum, there are a number of other computations to be done. So when I'm doing a multiplication sum, if it's a 2-digit or a 3-digit multiplication, I need to know my place value. Okay, units, tens, hundreds. I need to know, okay, with the first number, I can write it down. For the second number, I need to first put a cross or a zero and then start the sum. So these are certain things that they need to understand the procedures. Then once all the 3 numbers are done, you need to total, you need to add up. So there are certain procedures. Similarly, when you're doing a division sum, you need to know tables. You need to know you have to get a number which is closer to the number given to divide. Then the other thing is in a division sum, you have to minus. Then there's something called the remainder. Okay. So all these nitty-gritties or small areas, they get confused with. So multiple instructions is something which they are not very okay with. So these all areas that generally, they will face issues when you're working with the dyscalculia. Okay. This is a kind of writing which I think I've just shown you what it's written, and there's a paragraph which is given below. So it's an oral passage which is given to the child. And can you tell me what kind of errors the child has made in this?
The spelling of magic is wrong.
Okay.
He has written MIGIC.
Yeah.
So there are many spelling
And the spelling of carpet is also wrong.
Yes,
ma'am.
And also it's not written on the line.
Yes.
They have not maintained that. So that is also
Right.
an error.
Ma'am, I think the child got confused in I and L.
No, that's how he writes the I. Don't worry. He's not
The
confused.
ones-
That's how he writes
Even
the I.
once the spelling of
spelling
once
is wrong.
Spelling of ones is also wrong.
Yes.
He's confused
there are a lot of
between the
spelling
spelling
errors.
and the letters.
Spelling errors in this, ma'am.
The letters are not written on the line. You
The
can-
carpet spelling also is wrong. The carpet spelling.
Yeah.
See,
Ma'am, the child goes according to the pronunciation.
Yes,
the spelling.
absolutely. Phonetically, he's doing it phonetically. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So you can see the the passage which is written down and what the child is actually written up. So issues with spellings, when it comes to spellings, letter formations, the sizing of the letters, the space between the letters. So a lot of things. So now here at least I've given him a ruled paper. If I give him a blank sheet, I'll have like a rainbow. You start from somewhere, you're going higher, you're going lower, they're not able to maintain equal distance when they're writing. Sometimes when they start writing, they start with a very good introduction. But by the time the body comes in or the conclusion comes in, the whole crux of the essay is gone, So it actually you feel as if, he's written it on like 3 different days or 3 different turns, or you feel as if there are 2 or 3 people who've written the same passage. So all these kind of issues you see when they are looking at children with dysgraphia. What could be the reason for such a handwriting? Can someone throw some light on that?
Maybe the child was in a hurry to finish his work fast.
Okay. What else?
Maybe he can't have a control over his movement and mind.
Absolutely. Very good. Okay. So you're trying to say that he's thinking much faster than he is able
Yes.
to write. Okay?
Exactly, ma'am.
Yeah.
What else?
Not in mood to write.
Not in mood to write. Yeah, they never want to write. They want to do a
Maybe
writing.
it's difficult for them to
He's going
understand.
according to his pronunciation as he pronounces the names or the words. Accordingly, he's writing it.
Right.
He's in some pressure, something.
Okay.
Maybe it's difficult for them to understand that they have to write between 2 lines.
Yes.
Dreaming and writing, moreover.
Okay, tell you one thing. When all of us started writing, when all of us started writing our alphabets A and B and C, Did we start directly writing on these blue lines?
No.
No.
The
How
red
did we
and blue
start writing?
line book.
Which book?
Red and blue lines.
Absolutely.
We had that book.
Why was a red and blue line book given to us?
So that we can follow the lines and the teacher places the dots and we join the dots and we start writing.
What is the
according to the
difference?
column.
Why
Ma'am,
are you using blue and the red line?
In order to write for each line. The red line meant you stop there, and the blue line was
Yeah.
from where you begin.
Absolutely. Now, so the blue lines were basically for your alphabets of A and C and E, and the red lines are basically for alphabets like B, G,
Yes.
F, because you have to go either up or down. So you need to know how much up and how much down. You know, so spacing. So all your spatial issues are taken care of. So it's not that this child wouldn't have done, have not been, used to a red and a blue line. He's 110% done that, but yet he's not been able to maintain the distance. Or as one of the, one of girls said that, they're not able to, understand the control, the hand control. Secondly, when I'm talking about writing, what is the most important thing when it comes to writing?
holding
What is involved in
Grip,
writing?
grip,
The grip.
and the position while we are while writing. Like
Yes.
everyone
The
has a different
posture, how we are
posture while
sitting,
writing.
how we are writing.
Ma'am, the fine motor skills are
Fine motor
involved.
skills, absolutely. So these kids, when you give them to put a thread through a needle or sequence, or you put them beads, beading, lacing, tying, buttoning, all these fine motor issues are affected. So just imagine a child who's been struggling to write this would also be struggling to do his normal activities of daily living. Okay, that's the reason half of the time the mothers are under pressure, because they need to, they need to get things done for them. Getting them ready, putting their bags, getting things done. So, yeah. This is another sample. Now this is without the line. Can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, now look at this without the lines. Yeah, tell you what errors are here. I think I've almost written it down. The errors all written down for you all to understand.
They have used capital like syllabus
Yes.
in between of
Which
He's
capital,
writing
yeah,
whatever he
small cap,
wants
low
to
cap,
write
small
in
cap.
this.
Yeah.
The child is writing whatever he wants and wishes to write, I think, freely.
The
Okay.
child is a daydreamer.
There's no concentration.
Yes.
Yeah.
No concentration on what he's been
Like
writing.
discipline
He's
of
in a hurry to
writing.
write. Basically, a lot of hurry. Okay. What else? Which standard would this child be? Any guesses?
Third or fourth, ma'am?
Second standard.
Second
First or
standard.
second. I
Third,
guess.
third or fourth. Third or fourth standard.
Or a fourth standard, okay. Any other
Fifth
guesses?
standard. Fifth standard.
Fifth standard. Why are you all saying third, fourth, and fifth? Why everyone is talking about third, fourth, and fifth standard?
Because I
Because,
feel like
ma'am, it's
by the
about
time a child is
day
in fifth
and winter.
standard, they do know how to write. But since like this guy, this child has dyslexia, he's not like, he doesn't know how to write properly still. But like his peers, they all know how to write properly. But since he has dyslexia, he can't really make up his
You
mind.
can see a similar writing for a 10th standard child also. I've seen it. For a 9th and a 10th standard kids writing such in writing, using such in writing, and giving me such kind of a matter. Content. Remember I told you earlier, very concrete contents. You're not able to express. And so you'll see a similar writing. You can see writing like, I can see writing which are even not this much legible. So where I'm also struggling, there are times when I tell the child also to read, even he struggles. He also cannot read what is written. Yeah, it happens during my assessment. I have to tell the child, what have you read or what have you written, let me know. Or there are times when I have children writing English in Hindi or Gujarati, but they're writing English. And I have to ask them, I say, this doesn't look like English. So writing errors, these are certain writing errors that you would see in a child having dysgraphia? Okay, very illegible handwriting, below grade level content, improper spacing between letters, difficulty writing on the lines, difficulty in sizing of the letters, reversal of the letters, capitalization. So there were big caps and small caps, syntax, grammatical errors, punctuations, excessive erasures, inconsistent pressures while writing. So these are certain areas which are there in dysgraphia. Now, what I need to talk about here is every child, so every LD profile or every child having LD is different. I have never seen two kids matching exactly the same profile anytime. Okay, you have different combinations of strength and weaknesses when you're diagnosing a child with LD. It's not necessary that the child would have all the three areas, like we would have reading and writing and math. Very fewer times have I seen children having only two areas affected. Majority of the times it's all the three affected. See, around a 10% would be just dyscalculics, pure dyscalculics, not having issues in reading and writing. Another 20 or 30% having only reading and writing, but not math, you know. But majority of the times I have children having issues in all the three because one affects the other. Need specific teaching methodology or methods and accommodations to match the individual need. That's the reason these kids, you know, you have your peers in the college, you have, you know, people in your relation or relatives who have learning and they need accommodation or they need concessions like extra time, they need a reader, they need a writer, they need spelling condonation. They need to get these accommodations. So at least they're able to, you know, come up to their level or come up to their potential because they are not less than any other kid. They are as normal as any other child, like you and me, but having issues only in reading, writing, math. So why not give them that accommodation, give them those concessions and let them equally be at par with us, you know? So that's the reason you would see your peers in the college or in school during schooling, you know, they have been separately made to sit in the staff room or the library. They're given extra time. You would have a counselor sitting with them, trying to take up oral answers, you know. So it's just a way to help them cope up or deal and feel, you know, get that confidence back into them. So they need accommodations. They need these concessions. Secondly, it's a lifelong process. So it's not that, okay, my child has got diagnosed with SLD and that's it. I do some kind of a treatment and it goes away. No, it's a lifelong struggle for them whenever it comes to reading, writing, and math. Okay, so what are certain comorbidities? Let's understand what are the other comorbidities that these children would have along with the reading, writing. So it doesn't stop here. It doesn't end here. Okay, my child is a reading, writing, math problem. No, there are other things also which add up to the whole diagnosis. Okay. Is anyone most of you all are aware about SLD and or you all know someone or the other within your families or within far off relatives or within peers, anyone having been diagnosed with learning disability?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So
Ma'am,
I think
I'm an LD student.
Oh, okay. So let's understand comorbidities now. Now, what is this? Can you, so it's written there very clearly, it's ADHD. Can someone give me the full form for ADHD?
Attention
It's
deficit.
hyperactive, right?
Hyperactive.
No, give me the whole.
Deficient.
Attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Yes, absolutely. It's ADHD. It's also called something like ADD, which is the attention deficit disorder, which is generally seen in the adulthood. Here I've given some pictures. I've made some pictures. Someone can someone put some light on this, or can someone interpret these pictures?
Hyperactive.
Daydreaming.
Daydreaming, absolutely.
Totally.
And what teachers waiting for him?
Can't sit in one place.
Can't sit in one place. Okay.
Daydreaming.
Doing
Yeah,
two, three things at a time.
He's thoughtful.
Temper tantrums.
Temper tantrums. Okay.
Short term.
They act out of anger.
Mm-hmm.
Irritating.
The attention span is less, so he's moving from one activity to another very quickly.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, so his concentration level is one
Imaginating,
point moves to the other
imagination skills.
very fast.
Yes, attention is a problem, cannot concentrate on a task, cannot sustain attention for a longer time. So I'm saying ADHD, there are 3 areas you need to understand. First of all, inattention. So issues with inattention, cannot focus for a longer time, cannot, so their attention would be, span would be like 10, 15 minutes max. After 15 minutes, they're off, you know. Then there's something called as impulsivity, very impulsive. They need to get things right now, done right now. So a lot of gratification. I don't know whether you've heard about Freud. People have heard about Freud, Sigmund Freud. He talks about the 8th principle. Anyone, psychology students? Psychology students, any of you all have heard
Theory
about
of
Sigmund
achievement,
Freud?
right? Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, Sigmund Freud. Have you all heard about the 8th principle?
Hierarchy of needs.
No, not Maslow. I'm talking about Freud. 8th ego, superego. 8th principle.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So what is the 8th principle talking about?
There is like 3. I know about the 3 one. One is like ego, and one is super ego, and one is ID.
Yeah,
ID.
so it's not ID, darling. It's id.
Okay. So
Yeah.
ID or id is a person who is like a really nice person who wants to please everyone. Whereas super ego is something.
No. You just tell you what is id. You don't give me any other definitions.
It is someone who is just who just wants things to go in his way. That's all.
Yeah. So basically, the 8 talks about the pleasure principle. So anything which is pleasurable to me, like, you know, so the center of attraction is me, what I want, immediate gratification. If I get things what I want, then I'm happy. So my pleasure is most important than anything else. So you'll have generally see this it being very high in children with ADHD, because the whole house or a family revolves around the child. Okay. So out here, what you can see, so that's impulsivity. A lot of impulsivity, inattention, hyperactivity. When I say hyperactivity, means not sitting in one place, constant movement of the body, constant movement of hands. You know, either they are playing a drum or a tabla, or they are basically humming something, or they are you know, fidgeting with a pen. They're putting something in a mouth. So they cannot sit straight. Most of the times you have the the child's leg shaking. So there are times when you suddenly wonder what's wrong with my desk. Why is it shaking so much? And then you realize there's someone on the other side of your desk who's been trying to shake his leg. So you cannot stand, cannot sit still, continuous movement. And so much of movement that a person who's sitting in the front, you know, cannot look straight, or it feels little dizzy because you're not used to so much of movement with the child. So just imagine a person having ADHD being able to sit in the class for a 45-minute lecture or a half-an-hour lecture. It's so difficult. After 15 minutes, as it is, he's off because his attention is gone. And if he's restless, he's fidgety, then he's not even able to take down his notes. He's not able to concentrate in class. So how much of the part information he misses during these sessions? So children with ADHD, basically there are certain things to be done, you know, how you deal with them. I'll be talking about that later. So this is one of the comorbidity. It's a very high comorbidity seen with children with LD. So every child who has learning disability has issues with attention. So the percentage of the comorbidity is very high, somewhere around say 70% of children diagnosed with SLD would have attention. But every child whose attention deficit is not SLD. So every child with an attention problem is not necessary he would have a learning problem. But a child who has a learning problem, there are high chances that he would have attention issues. Okay? Have I made myself clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Now just imagine for this kid, tell you one thing. These children are there. There are generally you have parents. So anyone who knows a person having ADHD, anyone diagnosed with ADHD? You know someone who's diagnosed with ADHD?
Ma'am, I have ADHD.
Okay, so how do you cope up, darling? What do you do?
I try to calm myself down. when I know, because now I've realized that it's a problem and I have to deal with it. When I was younger, it was not possible.
Yes.
Everybody had to take all my tantrums.
Okay.
But yeah, now I try to calm myself down. I'm trying to focus because I know I get distracted really fast.
Okay. So you try to just come back to the task, whatever you're doing on hand.
Yeah. Because I know I start dreaming suddenly, and then they always during lectures, suddenly my teachers, when they're talking, they raise their voice and their tone keeps going high and low. So suddenly when they raise, then I'm back.
Okay.
And when they go slow, I'm off. So
Okay.
yeah.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask one question.
Yeah, sure.
Ma'am, is this a genetic problem as well? Could it be a genetic
For
thing?
ADHD?
Yes.
Yes, it is. It
Okay.
is. It is. It is a genetic problem. Yes, it is.
Ma'am, I also have a question.
Hanji.
Do medication works on like kids with ADHD?
Yes, absolutely. So when we have kids who are as younger, we generally send them for OT or occupational therapy. OT, generally people don't know what is OT, so it's called occupational therapy. Kids who are having issues with attention, restlessness, not sitting in one place, not able to follow instructions, we generally send them from occupational therapy as young as
Yes,
like
ma'am.
standard, second standard, third standard. The moment the kids are a little older, so when you're like, in the 8th standard, 9th standard, it's not possible for children to do the therapy. So we generally
Occupational and remedial, na?
Hanji?
Remedial also is there, no?
Yeah, but I'm talking about ADHD right now. So I'm just only talking about what interventions you do to do for ADHD.
Yes.
So you have OT if they are younger kids, you have OT. If you have kids who are older, you generally put them on medication, pharmacology. There are times where you can do certain diet controls. For example, they generally have a lot of sweet tooth. So you need to curb their hunger pangs for sweet. So either substitute it with, say, jaggery or honey rather than using your normal sugar, or try to cut down on your preservatives, things like that. So that's some kind of you're trying to reduce the sugar intake. But as it is, they're restless. If you're adding any more glucose to them, they're going to be more restless. So this is something you need to do. So basically, you start with OT for the younger kids. For older kids, you generally start on medication.
So the medication, does it have any like side effects on the brain? Like
there's no side effects as such on the brain. The only side effect you would see, depending on from child to child, is basically they'll have a little appetite which goes a little lower. So you reduce in your appetite. And so appetite is the only thing where you look where it affects, so there'll basically be a little weight loss in a child. But suppose if the child is not suiting the medication, not suiting the child, you can always give another medication. You can always talk to the psychiatrist. So generally, the psychiatrists are the people who prescribe medication for ADHD. And so then you can always go and talk to the doctors and you can change the medication. So you can always have that as a thing, to be done. So that, I think that's the only side effect you have. There's no other effects on the brain as such. Secondly, when you're taking medication, it's only taken at a particular time, especially in the mornings, because that's the time when you're going to college or you're going to school and you need to focus attention. By the time the child is back home in the afternoon or evening, the medication, the effect of medication wavers off. So it's back to square one. Okay. So there's no harm in starting medication, but yes, that's how the thing works. And any issues regarding medication, whoever psychiatrist you are going to be talking to, they'll be the best people to talk about. I'm basically a paramedical, so medication is not my area of looking into. But what I can tell you is, for sure, when you started children on medication, you've seen them much better. They are much calmer. They are much focused attention. They are better off. There are times when parents actually come and say, "Oh, I don't know what you all have done, but you just had some kind of a wand on them." They are much better. So it's nothing. It's just the medication which has worked. Their attention is better. Their studies become better. They're able to perform better. That's all. So medication is only given for ADHD. There is no medicine given for LD. For a child having SLD, there is no medication. Please don't get me wrong. Right now, what I'm talking about is only for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Kids or adults diagnosed with ADHD, that's where the medication is given. We don't give any medication for SLD. I hope I'm getting my point clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Can someone interpret this picture for me?
So what one person is speaking, the other person can't understand,
Yeah.
and vice versa, probably.
Okay. Well, where would such a situation occur? Or why would such a situation occur?
Probably because
In
the
a
brain
classroom.
is taking time to understand the words. Like,
Or the person can't explain the words correctly, what he's trying to say.
Okay.
Ma'am, maybe the speaker is fast. He's speaking quite like in a hurry.
Okay.
Ma'am, language barrier.
Yeah, who's this?
Aditya.
Yeah. Can you explain that?
Ma'am, like they may not have a common language. Both may speak in different languages. They may not know each other's language.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So this slide is basically for a language barrier. I'll explain. I'll give you an example what I'm trying to say. Okay. So there was a kid once who I was assessing, and I had a subtest to be done with the child. So I showed him a small picture, and I said, okay, I'll be calling out certain instructions. You're going to listen, and you're going to be pointing out to certain pictures which I show. So he was like, okay, ma'am, I'm fine. I said, okay, I give you the instruction. So listen carefully. So I give him the picture of a park or basically a garden. And I told him, I will give you instructions. So I gave him 10 minutes to look at the whole picture. The picture is in front of the child, so he could have a look at the picture. He's supposed to hear and then point accordingly, okay? So I gave him the instruction. I said, okay, you will point to the pair of birds and then the pair of people. Okay? So instruction was point to the pair of birds and then the pair of people. So I said, have you heard? He said, yeah, ma'am. I said, okay, now point. So he started pointing. He pointed 1, he pointed 2, he pointed 3, he pointed 4. And I was looking at him, I was waiting for him to stop pointing. So he stopped. So I said, have you heard my instruction? He said, yeah. I said, please repeat. He said, yeah, pair of birds and pair of people. I said, okay. So can someone tell me what was he pointing? Why was he pointing? Why was he pointing to multiple things?
Because he might have like got confused and jumbled it up.
Yeah. What? Okay. Ideally, how many things you're supposed to point?
2 or
right?
2.
All of y'all? Y'all agree with 2?
Pair of 2. Pair means in altogether 4.
No. It's 2 only, darling. It's not 4.
Okay.
Okay.
Probably, ma'am, he didn't know the meaning of pair. He thought like a group.
No. So I'll tell you what he did. So in English language, we say pair means 2. In Hindi, we say pair means our legs. So he was trying to point all the birds and all the people's legs in the picture.
Okay.
That's a language barrier. Am I making sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah?
Yes,
When I'm
yes,
saying
ma'am.
Pair means 2, but his understanding of pair is कि pair hai. So he tried to point all the birds and all people in the garden. That he kept on pointing. Because I asked him, I said, darling, what are you pointing? He said, आपने pair बोला. मैं सबके pair point कर रहा हूँ. So that's a language barrier. Okay. So what's a language barrier? Cannot speak or write fluently in the medium of instruction in school. And in school, in colleges, the medium of instruction is English, right? We all don't speak English at home. We generally speak our own mother tongue, Gujarati, Hindi, Marathi, right? So further, this increases difficulty in learning. So imagine a child having a learning issue and on top of that, having a barrier in the language. So that adds up to the learning as a problem, okay? He can express better. He can express much better in his own mother tongue. So if I tell you to explain concepts to me in your mother tongue, you will be much better rather than explaining it in English. Because English is your teaching language, okay? Poor environmental exposure, as I told you, like we'll be first generation learners or second generation learners. Our parents they've not been educated, so they don't know English. They are totally dependent on the tuition teachers or the class teacher. There are times in schools also, you don't have teachers who talk in English, or your tuition teachers are not talking in English. When you're conversing with your friends, you don't talk in English. So the exposure or the stimulation for language is poor. So they don't pick up. For example, now all of us are living in Mumbai, and majority of our population is Maharashtrians. That's how our understanding of Marathi is there. Even if you don't know to read or write Marathi, you are locally able to understand. If they ask you, kashi aaye, kuthe jaate, this is something very normal. You're hearing because you have people staying around you. So these are certain languages you picked up. Okay, like all of us would not be very well versed with Gujarati because Gujarati is not very openly spoken. There are very fewer people whom you interact, your friends, or probably someone in your neighbor. But Marathi is something which you are so used to staying in Mumbai. So you will only know it as a language, but obviously you would have a language barrier because you don't know to read and write, but you locally know it. So that's fine. Your work is getting done. So that's not a problem for you. There's no barrier. Okay. This can be corrected. So a child having a language barrier could be corrected with intervention through language enrichment programs. That's the reason I've written here. Do you speak English? That's very important. So there are times when parents come to me and when I'm talking to them, they'll tell me, Madam, jara Hindi mein bolo. So I'm like, okay, fine. Because all of you are not well versed in English. There are some parents who don't understand. Okay. So, but Hindi is something which they do understand. It's a language which I think most of us understand it. So when it's a language barrier, it can always be corrected with intervention through language enrichment program. Okay. So there could be other issues. So I made a slide of emotional issues out here, right? So you can have people who walk into our clinic and who come for evaluations. So you can, it's not that you just see these only in adults. It's not that, okay, depression can only be seen in adults or anxiety can be seen only in adults. It can also be seen in children, in the child population. So, can anyone talk about, so when I'm saying depression, like, has anyone come across anyone suffering from depression or anxiety?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can you all
Yes,
give me
ma'am. Can you repeat yourself?
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, have you come across anyone who's been diagnosed or having depression or anxiety? And
Yes,
if you
ma'am.
have,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, so can you all tell me the symptoms? Can you all tell me?
They always talk negative.
They always talk negative, and plus they think a lot.
Yeah, they think
you
a lot,
can see them. You can see them wondering. They feel like I can't stay over here. Let me take me out, or just get me out of here. Start wondering.
They also get a lot
level
of
of fear.
panic attacks.
Fear, okay. Fear of
They
what?
have trouble in sleeping also.
Yeah,
They
sleeping
can't
is very
sleep on correct.
Yes, very true.
They are very zoned out.
Yeah. So
They get panic
They
attacks.
don't enjoy. They don't enjoy the happy moments with people around them.
yeah, absolutely. Why do
Negative
you
thoughts
think they're
coming in
not
the
able
mind.
to do that? Why you think they're not able to do that?
Because they think
They're
so
not
much
present in the
negative.
moment.
Because they think that whatever we'll do will always go bad in the bad way, or otherwise it will be only the negative response we'll get.
Not actually, that's always the case, but there can be past traumas which does affect their thinking.
Yes, absolutely. There could be past traumas which affect their overall thinking.
Man could be affected by the environment the person lives in.
Yes.
Like parents of children who are always quarreling, or there's physical violence. So I don't know what environment.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so some kind of physical abuse, some kind of verbal abuse, exposure to a lot of violence, being from being brought up in a broken families or divorced parents, So a lot of these, their emotional, emotional needs are not fulfilled. And that's the reason you'll basically see them more clinging to friends. They are more, they are more in wanting you all always to be with people, being with friends most of the time out of the house, want to be in and around with people who understand them better. So they feel that their peers understand much better. They accept them the way they are. That's the reason they want to spend more time with their peers.
Ma'am, also it could be possible that they kind of become loners, like they want to be by themselves.
Yes, because they feel people don't understand us.
Yes,
they feel that no one can understand what I'm feeling. So yes, that's also the case. So most of the times they're always overthinking. So a lot of overthinking done. Now people who are depressed, who are into depression, you could have both the sides of the pendulum. You can have some people who can totally go very timid, can go very introvert or shut them down. You can have some people who just want to overcome their depression, could try to be more outgoing, could try to do a lot of shopping or binge eating, get into binge eating, so they put on weight, So all
Eating disorder.
Yes, absolutely. Okay?
Ma'am, could anxiety and overthinking be the same?
Yes, absolutely. Now, see what happens is when I'm saying anxiety, it's basically some kind of a fear. So the first reaction or the first stimulus that any person would feel would be anxiety, because that's the first reaction of a person. In any situation, they become anxious. What next? What will happen? What am I going to do? Yeah. And sometimes because of the anxiety, you get into overthinking. You try to think so much that the thinking itself induces anxiety into you. So it's a self-induced fear. It might not happen the way you were thinking, but just the fear of it, you basically are. It's like anticipation. You're just anticipating things. ऐसा हो जाएगा, ऐसा हुआ नहीं है, शायद हो भी नहीं. But it's your own anticipation and thinking which puts you into an anxiety phase. So depression, anxiety, these generally are also seen with kids with, and this is where we generally use our projective test. So which I spoke in my first slide, when we do IQ evaluation at that time, suppose I'm seeing a kid who's venting out, who feels that, okay, so there are times when we just have a rapport building session, or he's just venting out his feelings to us, or he feels, okay, I'm a third person, so he's okay telling me things about his family, about himself, what he's going through. So then there are certain tests that we done. So we do projective tests as the TAT or the CAT. It's called the thematic A perception test or the children's A perception test. So use those tests which give you a little more idea into what issues the child is facing, and then you can you can structure a therapy on it.
Ma'am, can you tell me a difference between like panic attacks and anxiety attacks? Because I've heard that there are like two different terms, but people often
See,
like.
I'll tell you one thing. When I'm saying anxiety, so there's something called as neurosis and psychosis. I don't know whether you heard about that. So when I'm saying on a pendulum, when I'm saying neurosis means, it's very subtle. Okay, you can work on. So when I'm saying anxiety is something which you can work on. So you can, you get into meditation, you get into these, you get into CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy, you meet a counselor, you get into therapy. So these things can help you handle your anxiety, which is particular related to a particular thing. Could be just exams, could be just performance, could be just, meeting people. So these are subtle issues which you can work on. When I'm saying panic attacks, these are higher, or these are the extreme condition, okay, which goes towards the psychosis. So they need proper psychiatric intervention. So when I'm talking about panic attacks, they need proper psychiatric intervention to be dealt with. It's a little long-term process. When I'm just saying anxiety, it's more subtle. It's on the neurosis side. So all of us, so I'm like, you're all students. So when you have to prepare for exams, you've got assignments, these marks are going to be counted, automatically become anxious. Okay, you will not have food that day. You will try not to sleep. You try to complete your things. So it's normal. So anxiety is normal. It's a normal thing. It's subtle, but it goes away. Like once the deadline is met, you finish your assignments, you finish your exams, you're over. You're normal. But when I'm saying panic attacks, it's something more to do with some past experiences or something with the ongoing things happening in the person's life, and they need proper psychiatric intervention. Have I made myself clear?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask you,
Yes, ma'am.
is medication compulsory for, a person who is suffering from depression, or their peers or friends can help them to overcome it?
See, when you're saying, see, there are two parts to it, okay? So when I'm saying friends helping them, obviously, yes, you all are the support system, you're the buddy systems, you all need to help them out. They feel more secure with you all, but they need to take some professional help. Because when I'm saying depression, to a certain extent, depression is okay if it's very subtle. But if it goes to an extreme where the person is into suicidal ideation or self-harm, now that is somewhere where you cannot, you can't handle that. You can't handle that at your level. they need professional help. They need to meet a psychiatrist. They need to meet a psychologist, so they need to get into psychotherapy, which has to be dealt at that level. So being a support system, yes, absolutely. But if depression is there, it is better the person gets evaluated and the correct intervention is done. So yes, as a support system, you're always there for them. They can always come and share things with you all, but please send them to psychiatrists or to medical professionals for help. Don't try to deal with these things at your front. I'm trying to take this opportunity to help, to tell all of you all, because you all are young minds coming in, and you all are the ones who are going to be spreading this word ahead, that okay, to some extent I appreciate, as a friend you are there to help, but please don't take things into your hands. Please refer them, or help them, or you can accompany them to the professional, because sometimes they're not okay taking their parents. So you as friends or people knowing them can help them being open to taking help. So we always talk about mental health, which is more important. We all talk about physical health, but none of us talk about mental health, which is a very important part of our lives. So I feel wherever it's required, you need to take medical help. Is it clear? See, it's as simple. Now, for example, if I've got fever, I pop in a crocin, okay, or I take some paracetamol. But the moment if my fever is not subsiding the next 2 days, and if I'm having a cough or a cold or something like that, I need to go in for a blood test to understand why is my fever coming. Is it malaria? Is it dengue? Is it flu? So I need proper medical intervention. It's as similar as that. I hope I'm making myself clear. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about anxiety. So hesitant and very nervous while answering in class. Fear of authority figures, especially parents or teachers or older siblings. There might have been nightmares. So disturbed sleep, stammering while talking in public or to friends, stuttering, bedwetting is another issue. Heaviness in the breath, very excessive sweating at times. Okay, avoiding or fear of initializing socialization. So if they have to go and talk to people or have to approach people, it's difficult. They are not the first ones to go and approach. Excessive sweating, I would want to just share a little thing out here is I had one kid the other day, I think a month ago, and my room I was in a smaller cabin. So I made this child sit next to a window, but yet he was sweating. He was sweating profusely. So I'm like, what's wrong, And I got 2 fans in my room. So I was wondering what's wrong. So I asked him, I said, what happened, darling? I said, are you feeling hot? He said, no. I said, then I said, I was sitting next to the window. It's quite airy. And so he said, yeah. I said, why are you yet sweating? And he was continuously fidgeting with his hands. He had his handkerchief, he's trying to wipe away his sweat. And then probably I said, this is not normal, because any kid would not be using, within a minute, he's using his handkerchief 5 times. It's something not very, very normal. So I told him, I said, just wait. I took away the paper from him. I sent my other kids out and I asked him, I said, what is the problem? Can you tell me? He's saying, ma'am, I don't know maths. I can't do maths. So the anxiety of just doing math itself was so heavy for him that he was feeling breathless. He was sweating. He was anxious. Okay. To extent, he was quite fearful. There are times when I have kids who suddenly start crying because I've given them a challenging thing to do. They feel challenged at the task to be done. So, you need to look into all these areas when you're doing this. So testing is not just testing. A lot of things go behind testing. So you're talking about clinicians or talking about psychologists. Their work is not just evaluation. It's your body language, your emotions, your thoughts, your behavior. So a lot of things which go into evaluation. Okay. Again, depression, loss of appetite, loss of sleep, social withdrawal, decreased ability to concentrate. Obviously, their concentration levels are poor. Indecisiveness, agitation at times, feeling irritated because people are not able to understand, they want to be alone. They don't want to be with people. Impaired cognition, fatigued out. They feel dry. They feel drenched up quite easily, tired quite easily, a feeling of worthless. I'm good for nothing. I have a lot of children saying that, okay, how much ever I try, how much ever I do, my mom's not happy with me, my dad's not happy with me, my teachers are not happy with me. I don't feel it's worth. So, these kind of issues are seen in kids having SLD. This is a slide on behavioral issues. So this is extreme. This is very extreme I'm talking about. This is basically conduct disorder, but you have children who have SLD, but could also have conduct issues, you know, not adhering to authority, not listening to, cannot work in a structure. They always want to do things what they want to do, arguing with authority, okay? Harmful behavior towards self, towards others. So in a general population, you generally would see something like this, like a sudden outburst of anger. You know, suddenly there's nothing happened, but their irritation is at a different level. Okay, so which is not normal. So it calls in for help. You need to look into the diagnosis. This is something which will go into conduct disorder. So you have back answering, you have disobedience, disregard for authority and rules, you know, tantrums, stubbornness, and non-apologetic way. They don't feel bad for how they behave. They feel it's okay, it's absolutely fine. Okay. Okay, now what are the interventions that we can do for these kids? So psychopharmacotherapy, basically medication, as I spoke about. You need to psychoeducate parents, very important. Parents are the first people who need to know what's happening with their child. And I'm very sorry to say parents do not understand what the child is going through. Because for them, what they're looking at is marks. They're looking at percentage. They're looking at careers, okay? But they're not looking at the child's strengths and weaknesses. Psychotherapy, basically counseling for these kids. Occupational therapy, as I told you, for ADHD children. So you can see the first picture on your left-hand side down. You know, you can see the therapist trying to work with the child. She's put the child on the ball and she's trying to put the cones on one on the other. So this kind of therapy basically helping for attention with movement of the body, you know. The second picture basically talking about a counseling session where the person is just venting out and she's very confused, a lot of thoughts in her mind. And the therapist is basically helping her to sort out her issues, you know. So you could always have, like, you know, you feel as if you're just drenched into with emotions. So a lot of it's like a clouded effect. And the therapist basically helps you to, you know, to segregate things that, okay, this is related to family, this is related to self, this is related to work. So a lot of things we just put together because you're not able to focus or think, you know. Then the other place you can look at a psychologist basically work, you know, like a rapport building session with the child. So you can see she's got a lot of pencil, she's got a teddy bear there behind. So when you're working with a child, you basically will be using a lot of colors, a lot of pencils, sketch pens, erasers, chart paper, glue, you know, everything that you can help the child to, you know, feel good about themselves. So you can give them some kind of drawings to draw. They can do some kind of craft work, basically like a rapport building session. There are certain tests that we use for rapport building. So I just mentioned a few of them. So you use something called as the HTP, which is the house person. You use a DAP, which is draw person. You use a KFD, which is kinetic family drawing. So there are certain tests that you can use for rapport building sessions. You can also see on the picture, there's another doctor there. You know, we put a picture of doctor basically for therapy. So, you know, for medication, prescribing medication and things like that. Sometimes some kids are not okay with, you know, being a child, being a girl. She's not okay talking to a male doctor. So they prefer a female doctor. Okay. So you need to get all those things. You know, sometimes kids are not very okay talking to a male rather than talking to a female. So yes, these preferences are there. These preferences are also there as adults for us, you know. Then you can see the small, there's a BD kind of a thing what I've drawn, you know. So all of you all, can you all just try to put your hands together like this? Can you all, you know, try to put this. Can you put both your hands like this? You can, like a thumbs up, you know, both your hands like a thumbs up, put it together. Yeah. Okay. So basically this is like a B and D. So when you put it, it's like a bed. So you know, this is like a B. So the middle part is the E, and then this is the D. So it's like a bed. So if you make it like this, you cannot make a bed. You can't sleep. So when I'm teaching children B and D, I always tell them to do it like this. So they know how to write the B, how they know how to write the D. Is it clear? So this is the B. So the B looks like this. Okay. So the bump is at the back, and basically the D would have the, the B would have the bump at the back. The D would have the tummy. Is it clear? So you put it like this together. Yeah, if you do like this, it's going to break. The bed is going to break. It has to be put like this. It's a bed. That's how they remember the B and the D. So when they're writing, they can use this. They can put the hands. Okay, B looks like this. Now let me write the B. Clear? Okay, I want you all to just look at this slide. Okay, so this is basically the slide I put in because this is something which our children with SLD go through. So, so failure due to poor grades, or criticism at school, being bullied in school, peer rejection. Okay, I know all of you all are there, and but this happens, and I very openly admit this because I get kids coming from schools, from colleges, and engineering colleges, law colleges, architectural colleges, and they do tell me that, ma'am, we are bullied. Our peers don't understand, we have an issue. So they're very open about this. And I think this is one platform which I would really want to tell you all that please be supportive of them. Do not bully them. Do not criticize them. They are as good as you all. They are much higher than you all, I would say. When it comes to IQ, their IQs are much higher than the normal population, But yeah, issues in reading, writing, math, that's the only areas they struggle. And we need to help them with that. So criticism at school, being bullied, peer rejection, comparisons at home with their siblings, cousins, how do they react generally? So they react, obviously, they are people, they have emotions, they also feel, so they disobey authority, they act out, or they have an aggressive behavior, sibling rivalry, jealousy towards peers, avoid going to school or tuition, avoid going out with your group of friends. Okay, poor self-confidence. Okay, the self-confidence is totally shattered, very low. So you really need to put in them together. Now, this is one thing which I have put here because it's not only kids who go through emotions, parents also have their set of emotions to go through. So they sometimes they're in a denial. They don't accept that my child has a problem or my child is normal because they look normal. I told you, they are not disabled. You can't physically look at the child and say, okay, he's got a learning problem because there's no physical disability. Okay. It's only when you start working with the child, even for me as a clinician, I've been working for the last 15, 17 years of my life, but I can't diagnose a child just walking into my room. I'll say, okay, he's SLD. No, I have to do my assessments. Okay. So you need to understand. So a lot of they're not able to accept that the child has a problem. A lot of denial. They feel helpless because they put the students to the best of the teachers, best of the tuitions. They've tried to do everything possible on earth, but yet not able to help the child. So helplessness. They are stressed out because what will happen next? What will they do? Will he clear 10th? Will he enter college? Will he do some career? Okay, worrying about their careers. It's a blame game. Why did this happen to my child? Why only me? Is it my fault? Okay. Is there any issue in the father's family? Is there issue somewhere in the mother's family? Someone else has been diagnosed with SLE. Very impatient. What will happen? I need immediate solutions to this problem. A lot of guilt feelings when it comes to their own children. Expectations from their own child. What will he do? How will he do? Whether he will be able to compete with the others in the society. So what do we need to do? Now, this is something which I want all of you all to understand is family is your main support system for any child or for any person on this earth. Having very realistic expectations from them, practicing a lot of patience. So when you're dealing with children or adults with SLD, you need to be quite patient. Believe in what your child can do, or believe in your friend. So all people who have friends who are diagnosed with SLD, please believe in them that they can do something. They will take time, but I assure you they will do things. Okay. Identify their strengths and abilities, exposure to multiple opportunities. So if you have students who are good with art, with drawing, with communication, with PR relations, I would really request people out here that let them participate in your college inter-festival things like that, or some competitions where they can show their skills, so you know how good they are. I generally do this. I generally ask parents, or I generally ask caretakers who come with the kids, that what are they good at? What is the other skill that they're good at? And you won't believe it. I have a whole cupboard filled with drawings and craft, and I have things made from paper mache. I have small diaries given to me. I have got some small jewelry made by children. So a lot of things they do. I have a lot of students now who because of the pandemic, come up to using YouTube, have started using blogs. They have started using their own cooking methodologies. They have started with their own bakery and cookery stuff. So a lot of things are there to explore. So let them pursue a hobby, what they can, motivate them for academics. That's all you can do, we need to always let go about the traditional approach we have towards studying, So how does the child learn better? So when they are in the class, when you have your professors, you have teachers who are dealing with children with SLD in your setups, you need to understand how do they learn better, or how would any other person learn better. Give them some kind of an activity to do, some kind of project work to do. You can use certain picture talks, you can use certain slides, what I've been using right now. So it's easier for them to understand the concepts. They can learn the concepts much better. I'm sure other children also can learn concepts much better. Okay. They can also do some kind of some kind of songs, some kind of movies, some kind of clips which can help them understand certain concepts. So you can always improvise, or you can always use a lot of nowadays it's all digitalization. Use a lot of digitalization while teaching, so it helps them, my children with SLD, along with normal kids. Here, what I also want to talk about is all of you all have been to schools, right? All of you all done schooling, all in college. Now, tell you one thing: when you all entered your KG class, or you're in kindergarten, what was the feeling you got when you entered your classrooms? Can people answer this? Hello?
Yeah, ma'am. The chat is on.
Yeah, tell me.
Excited?
Excited? No, I want you to tell me, when you enter this class, or when you're looking at a KG class or a nursery class, what do you see around when you enter the classroom?
It's very colorful and bright.
Absolutely, it's colorful, it's bright. How else is it?
It's very, you can see all creations, and, it pulls the child's attention to all the lovely things that are drawn or put up with colors and pictures and everything.
Yes. How did your teachers, how did your teacher generally teach you concepts in your kindergarten?
Showing the objects.
By showing objects.
By the showing.
By making us comfortable with the environment.
Singing poems.
Yes. Singing poems, lot of body movement.
Expressions.
You're using a lot of different textures.
Teaching aids like puppets.
Yes, teaching aids, very important, right? So all these things, exactly. So what did your teachers in the KG class do? They basically use a lot of sensory input to teach all concepts, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile, the VAKT model that we talk about. Okay. So the VAKT model is basically used, it's the best model to be taught. Even as adults, or as you're all college going students, when you're learning concepts, if you use all these different modalities, your learning of the concept will be much better.
Toys.
Yes. Okay, just look at this. I think this is something which we also do when you're not ready to read something. What did you understand from this?
It shows that learning should be fun, and it should be such a way that they start imagining things. They are like those fairy tale stories and all that. They are very imaginative for the kids.
Absolutely. I think learning made fun for every child. So all of us remember some teachers who made learning very interesting for us. Certain subjects, because the way they taught, the way they introduced concepts to us, certain concepts are so clear. Even after years of you leaving school or giving up from college, you yet would remember them, or you would yet would understand, you would yet would want someone to teach you things like that. So apparently what I'm trying to say is anything taught with a lot of colors, and you're using a lot of sensory input, is the best methodology to be taught for any person. So I would end my session out here by saying LD is what I have, not who I am. So these are certain few people you all can see on my screen, all been diagnosed with learning disability or the SLD, and yet have achieved things in life. So there's no stopping to your achievements. In fact, I would like to take this platform and share a thing that first of my students, the first student I ever evaluated and I diagnosed with SLD is a lecturer in Pune, and I'm very proud of her. So I know children who are architects. I know they are into law. I know children who are into engineering. I know children who are lecturing. I know kids who have started their own bakeries, who have started earning at even when they are like right now in the 8th and 9th standard kids. Okay, but they are earning members. So yes, so LD is what I have, not who I am. I am open for questions right now. So yes.
Ma'am, my one question which I had put up in the chat was that how is can anxiety lead to depression, or depression and vice versa?
See, I'll tell you one thing. When you're talking about anxiety, anxiety is a different area. Okay, but untreated anxiety can lead to depression. See, for the basic emotion that any person on earth would feel would be anxious in any situation. The first emotion you feel is anxiety. Okay, but untreated anxiety, yes, can lead into depression because you're not able to deal effectively. You're not dealing it effectively. You're not having any intervention done. Then 110%, you're moving to the other side of the graph.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah, Disha.
Ma'am, how can we reach you? Like, is there an email or phone number that maybe we can come in contact with you?
Regarding what, darling?
Like maybe counseling or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'll share I've shared my email ID with Stacy. So I think I'll tell her to just share it on the group where you all have on the WhatsApp group. She can give my email ID and you all can get back to me on that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. I can see someone else who also raise their hands. Malice, how do you pronounce it, darling? How do you pronounce her name?
Malise.
Yeah, Malise. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. Ma'am, do we have to renew our LD certificate or something? Is there something like that within 6 years or something?
Have you been diagnosed?
Yes, I was diagnosed when I was in 6th standard.
Okay, how old are you right now?
I'm 20.
Yeah, you better get yourself evaluated again because you need a permanent disability assessment. From where were you diagnosed? Which hospital?
Nair Hospital, Nair.
Okay, so you need to come back to Nair.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, you are all those who are 18 and above who've been diagnosed earlier in the last 2 years. That's a new GR which has come up that all kids or adults who are now adults 18 plus need to get a reevaluation done and get a permanent disability. And you all will be needing to you all have to make something called the UDID or the unique disability identity card.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Ma'am, what is your background? Can you tell me? I came late into the meeting, so I really don't know anything about.
I'm basically a clinical psychologist and a special educator and working in the area of evaluations.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I can see someone written here. There's some, I don't care. Yeah, there's a chat box which talks about a lot of different things of anger, nervousness. You all want me to speak about this or you all want me to separately answer the questions?
Hello.
Yeah.
So yeah, hello ma'am, Faiz here, if you would recollect.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. So basically, those people who don't know, ma'am was the one who was taking my assessments for the LD thing, and yeah, that's how I asked ma'am
Connected her, yeah.
to take over a session for this, and I'm really glad that ma'am agreed for this. And so actually, there are a lot of questions which we had asked when we spread out the form and PR message in the Google form. So here are the some most asked ones. So
Tell me.
yeah. Is dyslexia a genetic disorder?
See, as of right now, we don't have studies which talk about SLD being genetic. Because it all depends on the neurological disorder. As it's a neurological disorder, it all depends on the brain wiring of every child or every individual. So if I have siblings, I cannot say one sibling or a twin study, but I can say, okay, one twin is, is SLD, the other twin also would be SLD. No. So genetically, we don't have any research or studies saying that, okay, it's genetic. It all depends on the brain wiring of every person.
Okay. So yeah, how to reduce the anxiety while testing procedure? This is the question actually I wanted to ask, because the whole time the testing procedure went through, I was in a lot of anxiety situation, because like I didn't know what was coming up and what were the questions being asked. Like, will I be asked to solve maths or
Actually,
like
what has happened?
any other stuff? So how can we reduce them? Like, is there any way?
See, generally, when you're coming for an evaluation, we generally tell the parents that it's evaluation regarding your, reading, writing, math area. So obviously, you know that the expectation is of you are supposed to be doing all the three areas. The only thing you need to keep in mind is you need to put your best foot forward, or try to do whatever you can. I think in certain areas, what happens is sometimes children are in a hurry. I remember I keep telling you that calm down, it's okay. Take your own time. Don't be in a hurry, because sometimes because I think what is more important for you all is certification. How soon will I get it? Because I think you needed it for certain. There was a certain deadline we had to meet, but unfortunately we couldn't. But so that's I think that's where the anxiety comes in. Otherwise, I generally tell parents, and there are times when I speak to the counselors or I speak to the school management, and we tell them, okay, this procedure is going to take time, so please cooperate with us and give some leeway to the child till we finish the evaluation. Okay, the child is coming to us for evaluation. As I told you, there are times when during the evaluation, we pick up these subtle nuisances where we say, okay, we're a little anxious, a little scared. We would stop the evaluation, we would talk to the child, we would intervene and probably do a rapport building session, stop the assessment and call the child another time. So those things are taken care of. We generally do that. I especially remember in your case, I will keep on telling you, slow down, don't be in a hurry. You were impulsive, you were quite impulsive, I remember.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another question. Like the LD certificate which is issued by hospitals doesn't talk about the percentage of the disability in the areas.
Yes.
And whereas there are forms like for entrances, exams and all, which ask for the disability percentage.
Yeah.
So
apparently SLD, yeah. So the SLD falls under the 40% disability. It's a blanket rule across all the disability. So any child who's been diagnosed with SLD falls into the 40% disability. Okay, we generally do not write it because all the three government hospitals, we've come to a comprehensive decision that we would not be mentioning percentage according to us. Now, because of the UDID thing which has come up, the UDID card mentions it at 40% disability. But yes, wherever you're filling a form, if the child is diagnosed with SLD, you can write 40% because 60% disability puts the child into a disability category. So if a child is saying, say 60% into say hearing impairment, visual impairment, physical impairment, the child goes into that disability category. We do not assess the child for SLD.
Okay.
So it's a
so
proper
basically, yeah, if the LD certificate is given, which means that 40% is the criteria which has been fulfilled. Okay, that's really nice and informative. Okay, so next question, which is, does dyslexia have some effect on our physical health?
Physical health, not such. Not as such. I don't know why this question has come up. I've never had a question like this anytime. Physical
Okay,
health and
over
dyslexia don't have to do anything with each other. They are two
over
different.
the years, actually, I have heard it. Maybe it's a myth. Like the people or the children who are prematurely born, they are more prone to being dyslexic or having such kind of SLAs. Is it a true fact?
No, nothing like this. Nothing like this. Nothing like this.
Okay, so yeah, that's it, I guess. For the good ones which have been asked in the Google form. Any other questions? Please kindly raise your hand. We will unmute you. Okay, there is one.
Yeah.
Ma'am, my younger brother, he's a premature born, but he is very reservative and kind of nature.
Premature
He
born,
doesn't.
which month was he born?
He's May 2000.
No, which
yeah.
month, darling? Month is the sense 7 month, 8 month. I'm
Seventh
talking about
month. Seventh
7
month. Yeah. 7th month, 2 days.
Okay.
Yeah, so he faces many problems, like he doesn't opens up with people, or means he suffers through in his school days. I remember he was not able to learn things,
Okay.
faster, and till now he is not able to talk with people or communicate with people.
What is he
We are
doing
trying.
currently? What is he doing currently?
He has just completed his bachelor's in hotel management.
Okay.
But being in that stream also, he is not opening up to people, and we are planning to serve for sending him, international to Canada or some place. So so is it necessary, means we should first train him over here, or we just let him go because he's very shy and he can't speak properly?
Yeah,
Means they
what I
say,
would-
they say that yeah, he's premature because that is the reason he is like this, in this way, in this manner.
No. Apparently, it's his personality. So when you're
Yeah.
talking about any one person being introvert or extrovert, it's a part of the personality characteristics. It's nothing to do with premature. Premature, the only thing that would be done would be your IQ. So any child who's premature, the first assessment to be done is an IQ evaluation to know that what is the intelligence quotient of the child, whether he's normal, whether he's slow learner, whether he's intellectual disabled. So that's the first thing you need to know. So the prematurity has to do only with the intelligence, and because of intelligence, how much is his activities of daily living affected or academic affected. When it comes to something as introvert or extrovert, what I'm looking at is his personality overall. What you need to do is basically have some kind of counseling session for him where he can go and talk, and someone can help him with dealing with his own issues, and being okay to discuss certain things, or reaching out to people for help. So that's something that you all can do at your level.
Ma'am, you can help me in this, anything?
In the sense, I didn't get you.
For the counseling or for the IQ level testing, you can help me?
Yeah, you can. I'll be putting my mail ID, so you can shoot your message out there. I'll get back to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, there are the two.
Ma'am, can you tell me the difference between slow learning and SLD?
Okay. Okay. When I'm saying SLD, any child who is IQ with 90 and above, means a child having IQ of 90 and above will fall under the SLD category.
Right.
Specific learning disability. Any IQ which is below 90, okay? After that also there are two categories, okay?
Okay.
Any IQ which is below 70 goes into the ID category or intellectual disabled. In
Okay.
that also there are different categories. You have mild disabled, you have mild ID, you have moderate, you have severe, and you have profound.
Okay.
IQ between 70 to 79 falls under the slow learner category.
Okay.
IQ between 80 to 89 falls under the dull normal category. Any IQ score between below 90 is your low IQ category, or the slow learner, or the borderline.
Okay. Because when I was in school, I used to have slow learners also in my LD class. So I didn't know what was the difference.
I'll tell you one thing. In a classroom,
Right.
in school or in college, we always have, there are certain children who are toppers. There are some kids who are moderate. And there are
No,
some
during
kids who
exam,
struggle.
we used to be kept separately. So slow learners were in that separate class. I didn't know the difference between them and us.
Okay.
So, yeah.
See what happens, because they also need separate.
Yes.
They need to sit separately. They need some
Yeah.
kind of a help. So that's the reason they are made to sit separately.
Yeah, now I got it. And after taking occupational and remedial help, I was in 6th standard when I was detected. So immediately after that, I took all the help required because my mother is also a teacher. She understood everything and accordingly. So now if I go for a testing, will the symptoms and all has it changed? I mean, it won't.
It won't.
After taking occupational and remedial, nothing will change.
The thing is that you've been able to cope up better. Your
Yeah.
coping mechanisms have
Yeah.
become better. But
Yeah.
when it comes to evaluation, that's on our part, what evaluations we do.
Yeah.
So you don't worry about that part. You come to us, we'll evaluate.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to know, will it make a difference after all the help
The
I've
difference
taken?
would be, yes, you are able to cope with things better. So when you're
Yeah.
doing evaluation, we'll come to know how you've
grown,
you've done earlier with how you've been doing currently.
Right.
What kind of difference I'm finding in the results. Yes, those kind of differences will be there.
Yeah.
They'll be subtle because you've coped up. But
Yeah.
then yet would be areas where you're struggling.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, madam. Very good evening, madam.
Yeah, good evening.
I, as a mother and as a professional, I just wanted to understand that number one, as a mother, I just wanted to understand that the learning disability. Okay, so this issue is limited only till the learning itself, or it's like in future. For example, as of now, my child has been grown up now. Okay, so but still he has got the learning disability issue, and we have got searched. He has received the certificate also. But apart from the learning domain, do I require to continue with some facilitation or some support to him in her personal life, in his personal life also? For example, I see that he's quite unorganized. He doesn't keep the things, in a very right manner. So, is it his personality or is it a side effect of his learning disability?
No. That's a different area. What I want to know is, he or she, your kid has been diagnosed with ADHD also, or it's only SLD?
Yeah, actually, I'm the mother of Faiz Ahmed Ansari.
Okay, your Faiz mommy. Okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to ADHD, basically, I think that's why he's not been able to organize certain things. So apparently, some kind of a counseling or some kind of a help would help him to. Yeah, basically, we need to help him to organize things. He's not able to because it's a part of his ADHD. He's always also a little impulsive, wants to do things quickly, wants immediate results. So you will need to work on those areas. Yes,
Okay,
it
so
does affect.
my question is like, what exactly is the limit to that support? When exactly my role as a mother will get
See,
over?
as a mother, what you can
know?
do is basically, you need to meet any counselor or psychologist who can help you understand your son more better. We can see how things can be worked with him. We can do certain interventions with him, and work on these issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, my second question, as I come as an IT professional, okay. So I just wanted to understand that because I just manage my team also, I interview my team people also, before deploying to my organization and all. So if at all I find a candidate who is able to satisfy my technical requirement and all, and I find that, okay, this guy is a dyslexic student, okay, where somewhere and somehow it has been mentioned in his certificate and all. Okay. So as a professional, how exactly I have to accept my colleague, who's going to be my colleague, definitely.
Right.
Okay. Once I hire him. So what exactly should be my, way of thinking? Is it something, he has undergone the studies with some, you can say, concessions or something like that, then
Yes, absolutely.
maybe in future.
First of all, you need to understand what were the diagnoses given to him, whether he has all three, whether it's only one, whether it's two. Okay.
Okay.
Secondly, how has he been throughout his academics? Whatever interview you've taken, whether it's written, whether it's oral, how was he managing? Would he require some kind of a help to do certain assignments or certain things? You know, can you assign certain things to him only? This is only after you do the whole evaluation with him, you understand him, you'll be able to help him. So probably he will require a buddy system for sure, or some kind of supervision
Okay, for
sure.
some time. Once he gets acquainted to the environment, then he will definitely perform better.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
You just need to
Thank
look at his strength. You'll have to basically look at the strength area.
Okay. 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 Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I'm unmuting other people who wanted to ask you questions. Yeah.
There's someone from Ruya NSS. I can see the hand up. Ruya, Santosh, someone.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, actually my question, ma'am, what could be the reason, ma'am, if someone actually stuttered or stammered, or actually they cannot speak actually for a long time, that is for 1 hour, something like that. So what is the reason actually behind it?
Anxiety.
Okay.
Anxiety. So though I think I've been talking about anxiety throughout my whole session, because the first stimulus that any person would feel is anxious, fear, depending on, you know, whether you're talking in front of people, you're talking to a group, you're talking to your known people, how okay or comfortable are you talking to people, what you're talking to people. So all those things do matter, and that's one of the main issues why you have stammering or stuttering. Secondly, you also need to know how much of the stammering happens. Is it only while talking, or is it also when you're singing, or you are good at bathroom singing, you're okay when you're doing other things, you're okay when you just have to talk sentences? So the proper evaluation you would need. It would be better if you meet any counselor who can help you with the stammering issue. Yes, Ruchi, can Ruchi come with the question?
Ma'am.
Yeah, Ruchi.
Ma'am, can you say how to control anger?
Control anger. Okay, but it depends whether so this is your interpretation of the anger, wherein like you feel you're angry a lot, or you know is it moving towards self-harm or harming others? How is it? Ruchi, can you hear me?
No, ma'am, not like that.
Huh.
Simply, I'm asking how to control anger.
See, you first need to know why the anger is there. Okay, how much of the anger is there? What is the intensity of the anger? What situations the anger is coming in? And then only you can plan certain activities to reduce the anger.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, now I would like my program officer, Rahul Mishra sir, to say a few words.
Okay.
So you can unmute yourself.
I'm audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you so much, ma'am. First of all, I'm extremely sorry I couldn't join the event on time. I wanted to hear that, but luckily the recording has been done. So it will be beneficial for all those people who are not able to join, and we're also putting on our HR College YouTube channel where your lecture will be beneficial for those who are not able to understand the importance of this topic. So first of all, thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and helping us know the what actual dyslexia is and how it can affect a person, how to handle such kind of person. To be very frank, I came home from hospital and I was about switched on the TV, and the movie started around first on TV was Tare Zameen Pe.
Okay.
And it was about that only. So, and immediately my students called up, sir, can you please join? I said, very fair enough, I will join right now, right away. And let me thank you once again on behalf of HR College, on behalf of HSNC Board and HSNC University for sparing out time and giving such an insightful knowledge about on this particular topic, and especially for teachers like us also who need to be very careful which student. We need to also identify such student, because every student does not come up front and say that I'm dyslexic. Sometimes people don't open up. So to identify such people and to treat them with care and love and empathy, and more than sympathy, it is empathy. So that we can help them out in their career and the long run.
And,
Thank
and
you so much,
please give them accommodations. They need accommodations. They need concessions to.
True,
achieve
ma'am.
their goals in life.
Definitely. I'll also put the word across to my principal and also get it going, ma'am. So thank you so much once again for your time, for your session, and for solving all the doubts, all the students who are here. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, now I would like to give you the vote of thanks. So gratitude is one of the least articulate of emotions, especially when it is deep. So we have reached at the end of this beautiful function. Today, I, Shivam Agarwal, take the opportunity to put my gratitude into words. So on behalf of NSS unit of HR College of Commerce and Economics, I would like to extend my heartiest thanks to our speaker, Sheetal Dillon, for her time and effort. Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us with your inspiring words. You are an exemplary person, and we have a lot to learn from you. Thank you to our principal, ma'am, Dr. Pooja Ramchandani, for her support and guidance. Thank you, Rahul, sir, for assisting and encouraging all of us. Lastly, thank you to all the volunteers and students for their presence. Thank you, and have a great day ahead. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, with your permission,
yes,
can we end the webinar?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we have a quick picture with ma'am? Everyone can put a cameras on. Can we have some screenshots?
Yes. I would request all the volunteers to.
All the
please switch
volunteers,
on the
please put a
camera.
camera on. It's for a record. We can put it in our Voyager.
Yes, sir. Great to go. Yeah.
Is it done, Shivam?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.